This is Charles,
This is Emmanuel.
and you are listening to
Blight makes right.
the original Legion of Everblight podcast. And man, does it feel good to be back. I am on the hype train. I have my tickets, I have my luggage packed. I'm all aboard.
I took the plane. I'm a little bit ahead of you. I just landed on the other side of Hype Town. It is nuts over here.
Party going on, lots of beer.
Yeah, I had to duck indoors real quick to do this podcast because it was getting a little crazy out there in Legion Town.
Well, oh man. So, man, the amount of stuff that's coming out, we have so much to talk about. We're going to knock things out one at a time. And what do you want to start with, Emmanuel? We're back. What do you feel like talking about?
I want to talk about the fact that you have a beard, man. I mean, like, we were gone so long, now you just, like, grow out the whole beard. He comes back looking like Methuselah and stuff.
Methuselah.
Yeah.
That's where you went with that.
He's the oldest man in the
I've always
Bible.
got a little bit of scruff going on.
There
That's
you go.
it's right for me. But all right. Well, let's do Ravens of War.
Yes.
I am super pumped for this theme. This is fantastic. So I guess obviously this was already talked about in the dev chat, so everyone should really know what's going on. This is not some spoiler at this point, like everybody else already knows. But okay, so Ravens of War obviously got a lot of changes. Any Legion Warlock, now it is any non-character War Beast, Golab's in it. Not new, but all the Grotesque model units, Raptor model units, Strider model units, Blighted Rotwing units are now in. Hellmouth units are still in. Blightedness Sorceress on Hellion, Forsaken solos, Spellmartyr solos, Succubus solos. And then obviously you can bring the one minion solo, one minion unit. The requisition options. I can't talk. I'm clearly out of practice.
You're just remixing your speech, don't worry.
Exactly, yeah. 2 Harrier Lesser War Beasts is 1 requisition, or 1 Legion Command Attachment, or Blightedness Sorcerin and Hellion solo, or 1 smaller medium base Legion solo. So, and the bonus rules, right? Lesser War Beast gain mark target, and you can re-roll your starting roll at the beginning of the game. So, damn.
Hell yeah.
So when you saw this, like when you first, like, I think you didn't know about this until I sent you the picture, like screenshotting from the dev chat. What jumped out at you at first where you're like, yes?
Golab. The fact that they put Golab in it was huge. Like, there was all the casters that I really like Golab with, suddenly it's like, oh, well, I can now play them in Ravens.
Well, and he makes perfect sense. Golab is kind of a Raven, you know?
A little bit of a bird.
Yeah, so he makes total sense in the theme, but it was also, Golab's really good. And I've said it a few times. I think Golab is the best character war beast in the game. Golab's amazing.
Bird is the word.
Do you have a Golab yet?
I do. Oh yeah. I see. The thing is, I like him, but you lurb him. Like, you are like in a bay relationship with Golab. So I put Golab on the shelf for a little bit because I was like, if all you and I do on Blight Makes Right is talk about Golab, every episode would be like Golab, 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 Gorak, Golab.
Well, then that would just be like original Blight Makes Right, where we're all like, we all love Veil, right? Yeah. Like, that was 95% of the original BMR show. It's just how great Veil was. But we are shifting that direction.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
So obviously, I loved seeing Golab make the list, and but I also saw like 2 Harriers for 1 requisition. Opens up some interesting things that may not jump out at you right away, but I think that ended up being a very interesting, powerful option. But I will say, just seeing this open up and like having access to any War Beast, I was really enjoying Grotesques at the end of Mark II, and they were like my unit. It was like my only units I was really playing at the end of Mark II were like Grotesque Raiders and the minion unit. Now all of a sudden I can't even remember their name. Little flaming spear chuckers. Croak Raiders, exactly. Those guys.
You were setting it up.
Yeah. It's not that I forgot. I was trying to set up a manual so that he could squeal. But yeah, those basically were the only units I played.
Tim Black.
I know. So, the fact that I'm gonna play my grotesque, like since I came back to the game, I keep looking at my like foam that's just like 20 grotesque raiders into one thing of foam, and I'm just like, I want to play you guys. I painted all of those wings, and I did not play you nearly enough. And I like the grotesque assassins like from the get go, and there's been so many times I'm playing games, especially against Circle, and they have these speed 6, speed 7 Pathfinder solos that are like booking it to flags and stuff, and I'm like, my grotesque assassins could do that if I had a reason to play Ravens. They would be perfect for that. They like go up, murder some stuff, double swords, grievous wounds, put some shit into the dirt, and then sprint back to a flag. I want that in my life.
Little blighted cherry on top.
I know, right? Like there's a lot of things about the end of Mark II solos were pretty overcosted still, and so you had to really have a good reason for paying points for solos. Like they had to really do work. But the new scenario setup that we're in now, man, you kind of like having a good techie stealth solo that does work but can also be on flags, pure money.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree. Honestly, solo, speaking about things that stuck out to me about this tier, Requisition, Hellions. Like
yes.
Free 6 points is one of the best like utility pieces for what it does. It comes with a lot of denial. It's high boxes. It's hard to kill. Like Dags can buff it, Fayana can buff it. Like, and it's a great solo to go sit on a flag and be like, you can't shoot over here. If you come over here, my Cab Hellion's gonna kill you. I love that piece. It's one of my favorite, and being able to take 2 for free, like I don't know that it's overcosted at 6 points. So I think it's like getting free Hellmouths almost at 6 points. They're just so good.
Well, and we should probably also mention that they did spoil that the Striders get CRA back. So
yes.
Like their purpose has returned.
So excited.
Which is really weird because I had kind of a mixed relationship with Striders back in Mark II. There was a lot of people who liked them more than me, but when I did play them, I played them in lists that people didn't traditionally use them in. Like I liked them with Callus 1. I had a lot of lists at the time that was like Striders, Legionnaires, Beasts with Callus 1. And people were like, he's an infantry crafter. I'm like, well, he runs infantry, which is why I've got some, but he still supports beasts like a boss. Like Dark Guidance still affects them too. He's got Ignite, like, and so there was a lot of times where I really liked what Striders brought to the list because they could pressure the center of the board. They were high defense. They were stealth. So a lot of the guns couldn't remove them early, and it allowed him to pop feet when he wanted to. And they could do some work. They could, kill some key things. And occasionally people would not respect them. And then I'm like, Ignite, Dark Guidance, Strider charges. And they're like, what? And like suddenly those POW 9s or POW 11s, and they've got, Dark Guidance. So they hit, and suddenly like Striders are doing work that people did not expect them to be able to do. Like I remember at one point charging them into Satixis Raiders, and people were like, what? Like they think of it as a ranged unit, which obviously they are, but they've got a sword. So
I've got a reputation when it comes to NIS. I just jam them. I'm like, hey, it may be the dragon in me. I see them as little fodder pieces, and I think that Strider Scouts are like the pinnacle of that now with CRA. CRA is one of my favorite abilities because it's a damage and mat fixing buff all in itself. So it's like a very self-contained module. And that makes the Scouts very self-contained and self-supporting. And I'm really excited to see them back because they jam well and shoot well. So early, late game, you can always find a use for them. They're cheap. Like, okay, well, good investment, but not over-invested.
Well, and especially in this day and age, like we said, the ability to like snipe out a key solo that's on a flag or something, that is a huge moneymaker for what they can do. So even if they can't kill a bunch of infantry, their ability to remove a solo, even if it's not on a flag, the ability to be like, I'm just going to go kill that solo. And now they still have to deal with defense 15 troops, but they have one less thing that can actually go on a flag. And so you can basically take away part of someone's scenario game.
And the flexibility of what they can threaten is really nice too, because they can go up to really high accuracy and damage, or they can come down and do small pods of shots to make sure that they get reliable amounts of attacks on things. They can split it up and just shower a whole area and be like, okay, now I've cleaned that up. They're very versatile.
Yep. I dig them. So let's talk a bit about which lists jump out at us. Like, obviously, let's, to a certain extent, let's kind of get Callus out of the way, right? Like, obviously, Privateer Press had to stress test putting Rotwings into a theme that now has access to the Blightbringer with Callus, right?
Sure, definitely.
And so obviously that's one of the things that jumped out to a lot of people, right? You're like, well, you can potentially run all of the Grotesque Raiders and you can run all of the Rotwings. And some people even talking about running Banshees. I personally will not be putting any Banshees in a Callus list. Like, that's purely just fodder. They're not going to do much work the rest of the time. You're really just hoping that they burn up shots. And that's honestly, sure, you can run 60 dudes. You could do that. But you're not going to fit all of those into his control area. That's too many models. And if you're putting them that close together, you're just giving people extra kills with sprays, extra kills with blasts. But the idea of being able to play Callus with the Grotesque Raiders is fantastic. I consider them pretty much the perfect unit for him. They have access to stealth from the Grotesque Assassins, which are great. We were just talking about that. But they, with Gang, they're Mat 7, POW 12. With Ignite, they can go to 14. And if you Blightbringer, you've got them up to 16. But even charging POW 14s is solid. And they're a cheap unit. They've got flight. There's a lot to like about that unit. And I think it's something that they were only great at the end of Mark II for kind of a short time period before Mark III hit. And I don't think a lot of people have the chance to really explore them. And it was actually even more complicated back then. You had to desperate pace them to get them to 7. It was more complicated. Now they're just straight up speed 7. And so I'm real excited about the potential there. Obviously, not having access to Chosen is sadder. But
love me some Chosen.
For sure. And so I put together some lists, and the idea of being able to go, okay, Blightbringer and Golab with double Grotesque Raiders and a unit of Striders with 2 Hellmouths, and you get the 2 Grotesque Assassins. And I think I can usually fit in both Deathstalkers if I want there too. So you end up with tons of solos, tons of bodies, some of the most cost-effective models in the faction. There's something to explore there. And maybe Primal Terror still is the better spot for Callus, but it's worth exploring. And who knows, depending on what your list pair is, if you need to get away from Chosen, because you're using them in your other list, there's a very high probability that I stick with Veil 1 in PT because I am in love with that list. But every Legion player is going to have to kind of figure it out for themselves at this point, because there's so many pairing options now. And I just think there is reason to explore it. It's not going to be as crazy as some people make it out to be, because when you run into a list with all the sprays, all the AoEs, that sort of thing, you might just have to clock your opponent because they're going to murder a lot of stuff. But
you really hit the nail on the head for me too. One of the things that jumped out to me was a lot of my off lists for PT compete with my main list for PT. Like I'm gonna play Primal Terrors because I really like Primal Terrors, and it's probably gonna be Animag because I really like Animag. So that's probably not set to change too much. I mean, I could be wrong. There's still time to say, but I play a lot of other casters that I've experimented with in PT to say, is there something here that isn't? And looking at this and going, okay, I can get Golab. So the only place I could previously get him was in PT. Now I can put him somewhere else. Opens up a lot of list possibilities for things that I was already playing that can comfortably shift over and say, hey, I have different options, but similar options to what I was playing. I'm really excited about that. This is a good pair for what I got going on.
Oh, exactly. And I think providing more options with Golab is fantastic for Legion players. There's nothing to complain about there. We had a lot of really cost-effective tools that were hidden in Ravens, but those theme restrictions were keeping us from using some of the more cost-effective models in the faction. how many Legion players may not even realize that the auto point from Deathstalkers at this point ignores tough.
So good.
Right? Like, there's been so little opportunity to actually play them. So now all of a sudden, the Deathstalkers, the Grotesque Assassins, the Grotesque Raiders, Striders got better. Like, there's a lot of things that suddenly we have access to that there's going to be a lot of reason to play. And I think there's potential. I mean, Primal Terrors may still be our strongest theme. We will have to find out. But Ravens is going to be in that conversation at the very least. And it may be our strongest theme. That's going to be a reality going forward.
I like how, wait, before you move on, I like how you mentioned the anti-tough on the Deathstalkers, because you also have Golab in there, and if you really wanted, you could have Blight Blades, and there's a lot of anti-healing,
Grotesque Assassins got grievous wounds. Pop, pop.
So, exactly, there's a lot of grievous anti-healing theme in the list. So I like that. I think there's something I look for when I'm looking for a list in a competitive format right now, because of the amount of healing and tough there are.
For sure. So what I wanted to get to next is you were mentioning how there was things that you were planning to play in PT that maybe you might be playing in Ravens now. And so I've got to ask you, because you are a little more excited about Fayana 2 than I have been. Is that one that may be a Ravens list for you?
Oh, that's the one. That's the one, baby. Like, it unlocks her.
You just like the whips and chains, don't you? That's really your thing.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I really like Fayana. Doug sculpted an amazing model. I think she's got some really interesting rules. I didn't come on the hype train when everybody was playing her in the initial wave. I kind of missed that. So I'm on my own little personal Fayana adventure. But when I played her in Primal Terrors, I played her to have access to Golab, and everything that else was just like, hey, she can support these things. And when I played her in Oracles of Annihilation, it was to get access to Hellions, because her with a flying battle group is really good, and Hellions make them sing. And so I'm like, both? You mean I can have both? So I was super ecstatic about that. It took me like 5 minutes to look at the tier, because I'm not going to lie, I've been super busy. I'm actually doing this in an empty room because I've been moving. And I pulled up the tier and was like, okay, let's see. Okay. Holy shit, I can have aliens with Golab in the same list. And just everything else fell into place. Actually, you know what it is? It's you pushing me so much into that battle group, right? So the Golab Nerf is just money. It's very value. They're really undercosted models for what they do. And being able to play that with a great list that also builds around and synergizes that battle group was just what I was looking for. So as soon as I saw it, jumped up and down, did a little dance, put it in my war room.
Well, additionally, Golab and the double Nerf package work best with a caster with a damage buff. And the +2 gets you there, but +3 is better.
Yeah.
So
without a doubt.
So outside of is that where you're kind of starting with the Fayana 2 list? Probably go Golab, Nerf. Are you going to expand that battle group, or are you going into troops?
Well, I think there's room to expand the battle group. One of the things I think is really key with Fayana is having things to transfer to. She likes to play somewhere a little too close to the action sometimes, especially with her small control area. And speaking of her small control area, that's probably why my choices selection, when I have the extra points, which I suddenly have now because of the way requisition points work, is access to rakes. So I would go like Golab, Nerf, rake.
That I definitely like rakes in a pair. Like, I often feel like one is either not enough to cover both spots that you end up wanting to send rakes to, or one rake, they might just spike it and kill it, and then you don't really get the drama. But like, usually when you have two of them, at one point, they're just going to struggle to remove the rake. Like, defense 15 light beast is a weird stat line that suddenly dice don't always succeed at. Like, I have had heavy warjacks with like 7, mass 7, walk up, boost to hit, and then they miss.
Yeah, they're just not hitting the mates. They're just like, nope.
And they're like, well, I had to boost to hit because it's a 15, but this time it spiked low. Now I have to hit with my other weapon and buy an attack. and probably don't kill it. And suddenly you've got a heavy Warjack activation that didn't kill a light. And
Fiona can compound that. Like, she has her feat that makes them defense ungodly. And the fact that they're native stealth, they can sit in really awkward positions, and with countercharge, have that come hither. You put Fury on them, because they can do work by themselves. Like, go over, like, knock something down, eat it, and then be like, all right, now I've got countercharge up, come get me. I'm over by the flag. Or even just force people, if you're going to go to the flag, I'm going to countercharge to you. It's great.
It really messes
like you said,
with someone's resource allocation.
Definitely. And I like him in pairs with Fiona specifically because she also likes to countercharge. She can just do some silly things with her chain whip and be in good places. So having two rakes with countercharge up and having her with countercharge up and sitting near a flag or a zone says you have to commit more to this than you think, because you're going to lose some models over here, and that's going to skew things back in my favor. And that's what she does. She skews things.
Mm-hmm. So. And like, obviously when you hit defense 18, that's where there's really considerable resources that have to be dedicated to remove those. And they're not so expensive that you can't risk them in a zone where you're just like, I just need to deny points over here.
Definitely.
And sometimes if they want to clear that zone, they end up having to put in so many resources to get that rake out that you're willing to give up those scenario points, or vice versa. They can't do it. They just can't get the rake out, and it can mess up with someone's entire plan. It is just an awkward thing to deal with in a lot of games, and I think she in particular likes that extended control area, especially in some of these wider zone, like not wider zones, but like wider scenarios where the zones are more spread out, right? Like that's definitely going to help you. So
one of the things. Speaking of that extended control area, one of the great tricks you can do is they can get into some really awkward positions. So you let them flank your opponent, and then they can slam things forward so that your Hellmouths and your Gallows start pulling them in. And it makes it really hard for your opponent to hide, because it's like, oh, you think you're safe behind this wall, but Reiki Poot comes over and slams you out from behind the wall, and then I Gallows you an inch this way, and now you're close enough to the Hellmouth and you're coming on in.
Scary. That's scary. So I was going to say, I really like your beast package for that. What infantry do you want to run with Fiona?
So before I get into the infantry, I have to mention the reason I would bring Wrong Eye and Snapjaw, because Wrong Eye and Snapjaw I think is super key to running Fiona.
Wrong Eye and Snapjaw.
So
I feel like stars are crossing here.
Exactly. With Starcross, he brings a lot of the natural defense back, even around her, outside of her feet, because her feet can be a one-trick pony, and it's great to be able to put that out there as a buffer. But then late game, you have a lot of just defense 15 models. Like, try to hit that on the Starcross. Let's go. We were just talking about how hard 8s were to hit, right? So one of the things that I've struggled with in both the other tiers is finding a good unit to run with Wrong Eye and Snapjaw to really benefit from that, because if you keep them back, then they're not committing to the fight, which is what Fiona wants them to do. Right. And so I'm putting scouts in, because they can sit around, they're high defense, they're stealth, they can, sit with Wrong Eye and Snapjaw, who can be submerged, so they're also, you can't shoot at them, and then they can just CRA stuff, and then when you come in, they're super hard to defense under Starcross. And Fiona can give them Fury, just like you were saying with Callus and Ignite, and they can also just charge in and do work if you need them to. So
yeah, well, especially we're talking about a Colossal or something that's low defense. Like, I'm not necessarily saying you want to. I mean, maybe you drop this into Menoth, but like, it's not uncommon for you to see Adjudicator, and maybe you do just like charge in and get a bunch of POW 12s in there just to like soften things up.
One of the cool things about the way that list runs, too, is that the scouts are independent, Wrong Eye and Snapjaw are independent. So some of these really big spread out scenarios, you can have a whole package commit to a zone that doesn't have to be in Fiona small control area. And you can throw the rakes out there, too. Like with the extended control area, they can party in the other far-ass zone. And Fiona could be there with GoLab and 2 Nerifs, and also the rest of the list. So we're throwing it out there. The 2 Hellions, the 2 Hellmouths, and the Forsaken, and just...
The classics. So cool. I dig it. I think there's going to be a lot of ways to play around with Fiona. And I definitely, she obviously originally had a home in Ravens, back in the day. And so now she may be coming back to that home. That seems very possible.
Before we move on, because I want to talk about what list you're interested in, because I'm hyped. But let me just give it out because everybody, wants to hear the list in full in case they want
Yeah.
to try it out or like, hey, what list was that? It's Fauna, Golab, 2 Neros, 2 Rakes, Wrong Eye and Snapjaw, 2 Forsaken, 2 Blighted Northness, Sorceress and Hellions, 2 Hellmouths, Striator, Scouts, and the UA. And the free models are the 2 Hellions and the UA.
Nice. Just envisioning it all, like absorbing it.
Comes out to be like 91-ish points because of the plus 2 6-point models that you get for free, and then the free 4-point UA.
So it was funny when I started playing Vale again, and I was like, people told me she was bad. She's not. And I still keep hearing people say, if we had her old feet back, I'm like, honestly, if we had her old feet back, it would probably be too good. Like, there's too much else also going on for her right now. But it was funny, at some point someone says, like, man, you're just playing like a different caster, like NPT. Like, it's not like you made a Bethane list or something.
Yes.
But so it's funny because when we were going to do this episode, I posted in Discord and I was like, any locks that you guys like are really jumping out at you for Ravens? Because Emmanuel and I want to talk about it. And Wolf from Blightbringers was like, Bethane. And I was like, oh, she's already on my list. And he's like, I was kidding. And I'm like, I'm not.
No, totally. Like, unlocked. What?
I occasionally I built a couple of Bethane lists and I kept going. Like, the problem is that with her low War Beast points, like trying to have the beast that you want to trigger the feat, but you would have to pay for Harriers. Like, Harriers are kind of the best thing to just run into a position. She's not really going to run like some sort of like light spam list. So you really want like some inexpensive beast that can run into the right position that set up your models to have flank. And the problem is, the moment you were paying for Harriers, her list just felt so tight. And that was one of the things I'm like, it just doesn't work in these themes. And so Bethane was really bottom of the barrel for me. But this theme really interacts with her in a lot of positive ways. And
yes, it does.
So for starters, like, you can spend 1 requisition slot for 2 free Harriers. That right there enables her feat so much better. And grotesques again synergize so well with her. Like, they're a perfect, like, well, we go up to mat 7 and POW 12, but now we're basically mat 9 weapon masters for this turn. We're cheap, we're stealth, like, there's a lot to get done there. But again, this isn't a single buff. So like the grotesque assassins are going to benefit from that too. Like, if you just catch something in a melee range, the grotesque assassins walk up and they're suddenly mat 9 weapon masters basically, and they have grievous wounds. Like, they don't even necessarily have to kill something, but they can go up, pop some stuff, sprint back to a key spot. Like, there's a lot to like there. The theme obviously has some range implications. Like, if you want to run some beasts with her that, bring that range threat, she's got Disintegration, which is a fantastic spell. It's kind of like Parasite, not quite as strong, but it also does damage. So you've got a POW 13 that it lowers the armor on hit. So it's effectively like a POW 15 spell. And so I think Striders are an excellent addition there because obviously they're a great Ashenvale target. Like, sometimes when you just have Striders with Ashenvale, they're making it hard to hit everything else too, because they're hard to remove. A lot of the time they don't want to try to kill something that's defense 17. But then they're like trying to swing at a Grotesque who's defense 12, but they're still in Ashenvale. So now it's effectively like 14, and it's just skewing all of these numbers. They're a great option for Bloodthorn, just to like start corroding the crap out of stuff.
Definitely.
But again, they also will benefit from the feat. And so again, people will forget that these things can do melee work. So you could disintegrate something.
7.
Yeah, right, exactly. But you could disintegrate something, put a bunch of like POW 12, shots into it, softening things up. So again, more synergy there. You've got potential. You're going to probably run Harriers, so you're going to have Mark the Target if you want. You've got access to a wide range of ranged beasts. And then Golab is a perfect finisher for the
Oh,
like it can anchor the list for you in a lot of ways.
definitely.
She can disintegrate something to like help set up for it because disintegrate does damage. So a lot of the time you're like, disintegrate, now I have finisher ready, go lab, go murder that thing and come back.
Speaking of GoLab, I really like that she can bring Rot Wings as a really cheap option because, like you mentioned, she's really low on points, and then Cloak of Ash them because it just makes them that much more obnoxious to get rid of, and they're fast and they can get into places early. And GoLab can just have a little bit of meat bubble wrap for himself.
Yeah, for sure.
With Action Veil.
I think Bethane is actually worth exploring in this theme. It kind of accidentally brings a bunch of things for her. It was almost kind of like someone built a theme for her but didn't realize it. But it's going to be interesting because, you know, you could build kind of based on what I was talking about, but you could still kind of tilt it a little bit more like a range direction because now you have access to disintegration and a good theme that can bring you lots of range threats. And so I don't know. It's going to be something worth exploring. I don't have like a finalized list, but I was just looking at the point, and now at least it feels like you can run everything that you want. And let's also just for a moment here think about how stupid it will be to have Hellmouths benefit from flank. Like,
yeah, buddy.
These tentacles are suddenly Mat 8 weapon masters for no reason. Like, and it's not like you're doing any extra work for that. Just as long as your beast got under the right spot. And you could very easily run that list with 4 free Harriers if you want.
Well, and what's interesting with that list interaction with the feet and the Hellmouths is that, like, effectively you can drag things into her feet, you know, so that they're in a position where you want to get all the benefits and then drop that PAL 17 Maw on there.
Yep, and when she goes into her super suit, Bethane is pretty durable. And I mean, she's still got a lot of wonky rules, and she still maybe is something that Privateer Press needs to like look at and tighten up. But she's real interesting, and I do think that there may actually be a real list in here. And that's not me trying to be snowflakey. You guys know that's not really what I do.
Yeah,
like I will tell you if I
yeah.
think a list is bad. Like people, I hear a lot of people saying they want to work on Lilith 2 lists for this theme, and I just don't think it's there for Lilith 2. I can see why you'd want to build it, but honestly, I always struggled to get good work out of her in Mark 2, and she was way better then. And I just really don't see it happening now. And I think you have to have really good reason to play a Fury 5 caster within the new scenario packet. You best 100%. Have a really, really good reason.
I mean, notice that we sat here and spent probably a good 10 minutes talking about how a 6 Fury Warlock is going to overcome those scenarios specifically.
Yeah, exactly. And Bethane being Fury 7 is another reason where she can really stretch out, and she can potentially be a bit further up the board than some other casters.
Like you said, she's way more durable than your average caster when she's in the meat suit.
For sure. So I think there's a lot to explore here, and I think there's probably at least another caster or two that we haven't necessarily jumped out at us as like, are they going to belong in Ravens? Like, because I've been talking with people and they're like, well, what about Thags 2 in Ravens? He likes Golab, and I'm just kind of like, I want to try Thags 2 in Primal Terrors with a more, beast heavy loadout. Like, I was already kind of on board for Thags 2, and I want to explore more things. But just because they can play here, it does not necessarily mean they have a better option. They do not have a better option somewhere else. So it's going to take a lot to test. And thankfully, we've got a lot of Legion information thrown at us really quickly. And so Legion players, it's just on us now to like start testing stuff because this is looking real good, real good. I remember back in Mark II, one of the things that I said a lot was it's not that we can necessarily counter everything all the time, but Legion was always really capable of building a list that could counter any meta threat. And that was harder for us recently. We just didn't have enough list options. But I think with the way that these new themes are looking, and the Ravens in particular, there's a lot of great options for you to build for whatever your meta boogeymen are. Like, Immortals are 101. No part of Deathstalkers. It's just going to be like popping them bitches. So.
Any parting shots? Any last super excited like tidbits you want to get out there?
Not really for this one. We obviously have not had a lot of chance to get in games. I did really enjoy your episode with Disciples of Agony.
Hey, they were awesome.
Well, all of you guys were awesome. That was a really entertaining episode. It's probably one of my favorite podcasts I've listened to in quite a while. So
Nice.
you guys really killed it on that. I liked the whole conversation. If you listeners, if you have not checked out that episode, I know you did share that on the BMR page, if I recall.
I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did. But I would definitely check it out. I love the way that conversation was going, and it's some stuff. It's some food for thought.
It was a really interesting episode. I ended up in Milwaukee on work, and then Brian reached out to me and said, "Hey, man, like, is this weird? We should hang out." And I was like, "Okay, sure, let's hang out." And
you're like, I'm all about weird.
Yeah, totally. Well, and it's like podcast to podcast, man. Like, let's doc. So we hung out.
Let's doc? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I said let's
doc. Okay, that's going to be a thing. We're docking.
Oh my God! Please don't. Anyways, so we ended up doing the podcast from my hotel room there in Milwaukee, which is pretty cool. And I got to hang out and play some games with the Cult Gentlemen. And the podcast specifically, though, the content was created because they knew I was coming on. They're like, "Hey, we have a theme we want to talk about."
Docking? Was it docking that you wanted to talk about?
Docking. So they wanted to talk about stale meta, stale factions.
No, spoilers.
Yeah. No, go check it out because it's totally worth the conversation we had because it's not what you expect. And I think that by the end, we had a really good, clean episode. So
clean is not necessarily the word I'd use. You're a dirty boy.
I am. It was sloppy. I'm not going to lie. I just want them to think it was clean so they go listen.
Well, you were also playing Scorn, weren't you?
It's true. I crossed over. Well, no, I played Legion once. So I played Scorn, and then I got to play a Legion on Legion Mirror, which was pretty awesome. I had played Phaeona 2 versus Veil 2. With it was PT versus Flying Circus.
Interesting. All right, listeners. Well, I think we're going to wrap this one up for you guys. Again, thank you for tuning in to listen. I know that we've been on hiatus for a bit, but we had our reasons. But things are starting to come back together, and we're going to have lots of Blighted, awesome hype for you because we've got 3 more themes to talk about, bitches.
You know it.
So, all right. Blights out.